Thanks, son. I said, thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Angie. I am the discipleship pastor here at Life Vineyard Church. So it is my joy to welcome you and be able to preach to you this morning. David talked a little bit about core communities, and I will be out here at this table along with Heather Hollis out after this morning. If you want to learn more about core communities, we actually need, if you're someone that's like, I don't know anyone and I would like to sign up for a core community, we actually need more people that don't know anyone, that don't have a group of people to come and sign up. So if that's you, I just wanted to clarify that today. Come on out. Come on out. We will get you signed up to be in a core community with some other people. So yeah. Okay. Well, today, you guys, is the end of our Judges series. I am closing out our Judges series today. If you've been paying attention during this whole 6 weeks or 7 weeks that we've been doing Judges, you will know that the Israelites, who are God's chosen people, they're a mess, you guys, right? They're a mess just like us. They keep forgetting God and what he's done for them. And we're told multiple times that they keep doing what is right in their own eyes. They suffer consequences and consequences and consequences of their actions as they stray from God's ways. They get confused and afraid and stuck in the same patterns, and they are in this cycle of sin and deliverance for 400 years. During the whole time of the Judges, it's depressing. We talked about that. But what is hopeful? The hope that emerges from this book is that even though the Israelites got themselves into a lot of really terrible situations, no matter where they found themselves, every single time they were in need and they called out to God, he answered them. He raised up and empowered, just like David said, ordinary people or judges who were willing to work with him. Now, none of the judges that we've met thus far, none of them, they have not been exceptional humans. They had characteristics or traits that God ended up using in order to lead Israel in the context of either local government or maybe deciding cases or even in military battles. In the book of Judges, it's not written in chronological order, so I want to give you I want you to know where we are when we come into our scripture today. So I want you to just know that what I'm giving you now is kind of like the background of like where Israel is at right before we open in Judges 13. So right after Deborah had delivered the Israelites from the Canaanite people, okay, right after that had happened, there was a 40-year period of peace. Now, during that time, there's no fighting, there's no stealing anything, Israel's not being threatened. But sometime during that 40-year period, there are a few Philistines that decide that they're going to come into the Israelite land and they're going to live there. A few turned into a lot. And like after 100 years of time, the Philistines were firmly established in the Israelite land. Now, other nations that we've learned about in this series, what they have been doing is they wanted to just come in and steal Israel's stuff. They wanted their crops or they wanted their flocks. And then they would come in, they'd steal it, and then they'd go home with the stuff that they stole. But the Philistines, they didn't want to do that. The Philistines, they're completely different. They want to take over the land that the Israelites were living in. Now, this is your house, okay? I want you to imagine this is your house. They're not breaking in to steal your cash and your TV and your jewelry like when you're at work and then going back with their things, with your things. Instead, the Philistines, they're like parking their car on the street in front of your house, and then they call some friends, and their friends are like tent camping in your yard, and then more people show up, and they're using your hose, and they're cutting down your trees for firewood, and they're eating the food from your garden, okay? Like, Then one day you're like eating dinner and they just move in and they're taking over the bedrooms, okay? That's what the Philistines are doing to the Israelites, all right? But I don't want you to miss that they're not just like strangers or a nuisance. They are enemies, okay? They are enemies that have been harassing the Israelites and their friends and their family for a lot of years. They're strong and ruthless bullies that let nothing get in their way, and they do what they want. And when our star judge today that we're going to talk about arrives on the scene, the Philistines had controlled the land fully for 40 years. I turned 41 this week, and I'm telling you, that's my whole life long, you guys. Can you imagine living with an enemy for 40 years? That's a long time. This was the longest Israel had ever been oppressed by another nation. We're going to read in Judges 13. You can turn there. You have Bibles in the backs of the seat behind you or in front of you, or you have it maybe on your phone if you want. Judges is towards the beginning. While you're turning there, we are going to be talking today about arguably the most famous judge, okay? Samson. I know. Every time I tell people I'm talking about Samson, they're like so excited about it. Samson's story spans all of Judges 13 and 14 and 15 and 16. And we're not going to be reading all of it today. We'll read a good chunk today. We're not reading all of it. But I want you to know, if you go home and you're like, he was a crazy dude, I want you to read it. I want you to go through and really see all the things. It's a very thrilling biblical story beginning to end. My suspicion is that a good chunk of you do know some things about Samson. When I asked people this week, what do you know about Samson? So many people said, I know that Samson is strong. And so many people said, I know that he had a lousy friend named Delilah. Those are the things. A couple people here and there had a couple other details, but that's pretty much it. Samson is strong, or Samson has this lousy friend named Delilah. No one, not one person, said anything about him being a judge. And no one said anything about the rest of his life. So I want to broaden Samson's legacy today, okay? We're going to jump around. You can leave your Bibles open. You ready? Are you there in Judges 13:1? Yeah, we're there. Okay, here we go. Again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord. So the Lord delivered them into the hands of the Philistines for 40 years. And a certain man of Zorah named Manoah came from the clan of the Danites. He had a wife who was childless and unable to give birth. The angel of the Lord appeared to her and said, you are barren and childless, but you are going to become pregnant and give birth to a son. Now see to it that you, Mom, drink no wine or other fermented drink, and that you do not eat anything unclean. He says it again. You will become pregnant and have a son, whose head will never be touched by a razor, because the boy is to be a Nazirite, dedicated to God from the womb. He will take the lead in delivering Israel from the hands of the Philistines. You can pause there for a second. So the story of Samson begins with an angel announcing his arrival and giving very specific instructions on what Mom is to do. No wine, no fermented drinks, eat nothing unclean. And then he says, here's what your son's going to do. He is going to be a Nazirite, dedicated to God from the womb, and he will take the lead in delivering Israel from these people that are like coming in and living in their space. But that's the key part right there. He is not a normal person, just like a normal person. He's not going to be just anyone. He is going to be a Nazirite, and he is going to be a deliverer. Now, after this encounter, the unnamed mom, we don't know her name, she goes and she tells her husband Manoah, and she says, hey, guess what? Had this visit from an angel, and I'm very excited about it. This is what he said. And then Manoah, he goes, jump to verse 8. Manoah goes, and I love this. He prays, okay? Manoah prayed to the Lord, pardon your servant, Lord. I beg you to let the man that you sent us to come again to teach us how to bring up the boy that is to be born. You guys, I think we can read that and be like, he just missed out, right? He just wants an angel encounter too. And so he's like, can you just send someone back? And in that, I just feel like that's hilarious. So we can read it and think that he was sad that he missed out on this angel encounter, or maybe even that he's doubting what his wife said. But I feel like I don't want to miss, and I don't want you to miss, that after he heard the news about an angel visiting his wife to announce that she would be having a son, Manoah goes straight to God. He's got questions. He's a planner. Who can relate? Yeah. He's gonna have a son. He's never had a son. He's gonna be a new dad. And this person, this man, this son is gonna lead Israel from the hands of the Philistines. And that seems like a big deal. And we have no idea how the Israelites are doing spiritually at this time, right? The Israelites are not doing well spiritually, so I think it's precious that Manoah goes straight to God after he hears what his wife says. Verse 9, God heard Manoah, and the angel of God came again to the woman while she was out in the field, but her husband Manoah wasn't with her. You guys, God's hilarious. He prayed, God heard, angel shows up again to the woman. God just does not do stuff the way we think he's going to, right? For the sake of time, I'm just going to tell you what happens next. You can follow it even with your finger if you want, but. So the angel shows up again to the woman. She runs, gets her husband Manoah. They talk to the angel, okay? Then the angel gives the exact same information a second time, but just to both of them this time. Manoah prepares an offering to the Lord. The angel ascends in the flame of the offering, and that really freaks out mom and dad, okay? That freaks them out. But it also confirms that this man isn't just any man. He actually is from God. We're going to go all the way to verse 24. The woman gave birth to a boy, named him Samson. He grew, and the Lord blessed him, and the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him while he was in Mahanadan between Zorah and Eshtaol. We're going to pause for a second. You guys, did you get that Samson's special? Like, through this, we know he's a special dude, okay? We're not told how any other judge is born. No. Only Samson. All the other judges are raised up and empowered as they're older, yet Samson is chosen from the womb. And I just feel like, what promise, right? His parents must have been like, this is great hope for us. In verse 5, the angel tells Samson's mom, the boy is to be a Nazirite dedicated to God from the womb. And it's important to note here that anyone could take a Nazirite vow. And the Nazirite vow is actually explained in number 6, like if you want to read it later on. Number 6, it's 8 verses. It's not super long. But the person that wanted to take the Nazirite vow would, number 1, decide how long they wanted to take the Nazirite vow for. And Jewish tradition was usually like 30 days. And then during that 30-day period, they would drink no alcohol. They would eat nothing made from the grapevine. No grapes, no raisins, no grape juice. They would not cut their hair, and they would not come near a dead body. Those are like the rules. Almost like like the whole 30, there's like rules for that, right? Okay, so this is like, there's some rules. You gotta follow these rules if you're gonna take the Nazirite vow. But the purpose of the vow was complete dedication to God, indicating everybody, to the whole community, that they are completely dedicated to God. Numbers 6:8, the very end, says, throughout the period of the dedication, they are consecrated or holy to the Lord. It's an outward testimony to the entire community that the person is fully committed to serving God. And even though Samson's mother was the one that kind of took this vow on for Samson, the angel of the Lord is saying Samson should be truly dedicated to God all the days that he lives. He would have been seen as a living miracle of God's power to deliver his people from their longest enemy oppression yet. Well, biblical scholars believe that where it says in verse 25 that the Lord began to stir him, they think that that was like around 18, 19 years old, okay? So Samson grew, the Lord blessed him for like 18, 19 years, and then he began to urge him to do something in order to deliver his people. Now, if you don't know this story, you're like, what is going to happen now? Is he going to raise an army like the other people? Is he going to go into everyone's houses and help them establish boundaries? How's he kicking out the Philistines, right? What is he going to do? If you know, you know. It gets messy, right? Samson struggles. Through all of chapter 14 and chapter 15, you will see Samson, he is, I feel like Mel would say, he's a dude, you know? Samson's a dude. There are some blockbuster stories in there, okay? But spoiler alert, he's not exactly like we thought he was going to be, okay? Let me give you some highlights. In the very beginning, like literally verses 1, 2, 3 of chapter 14, Samson sees a Philistine woman he likes. He decides he wants to marry one of the enemies he's supposed to be delivering his people from. Like, dang. He murders 30 innocent people because he loses a bet. Okay. He eats honey out of a dead lion. Remember, no dead bodies. He eats honey out of a dead lion that he killed with his bare hands, and he shares this honey with his parents and does not tell them where it came from. He takes revenge on his Philistine wife's father by tying together the tails of 300 foxes that he's caught. He ties them together 2 by 2 and lights them on fire. He visits prostitutes and he repeatedly lies. Guys, the list goes on. This is why he is the most well-known judge. He's wild, he's crazy, and he worked alone to combat the Philistines in his own selfish ways, a little at a time. You may be wondering, is this the same guy that the angel was talking about? He's immature, he's impulsive, he's bitter, he is selfish, and he seems to have a little regard for the God of Israel. But guys, here's the key. Even with all we know about Samson's life, the recurring theme emerges that even though Samson's character flaws contradict his vow of being completely dedicated to God, and in spite of his repeated rebellion, God continues to use Samson, gifting him with supernatural strength to deliver Israel from the Philistine oppression, just as he was called to do. But why? Does anyone know why God continues to use people when they consistently are operating out of God's will? I don't know. I don't honestly have a great answer for you. I think it's a mystery. There seems to be this abundantly gracious window of time when the people of God, all throughout history and even up until right now today, when we are allotted some real dumb mistakes without the favor of God being removed from our lives. And I'm not talking like little dumb decisions like I'm going to use my tithe money to pay my speeding tickets this month. I'm talking big dumb decisions. Like on my way out the door, I'm going to pick up that offering box and I'm going to take it every week. I'm going to steal it and I'm going to party and cheat on my spouse type of big dumb mistakes. Somehow, in ways God only knows, His grace covers and keeps us in line until it doesn't. Flip to Judges 16, 14 and 15. Crazy. You guys read it later. You're going to be like, what? Verse 4, 16:4. Sometime later, Samson fell in love with a woman in the valley of Sorek whose name was Delilah. The rulers of the Philistines went to her and said, "See if you can lure him into showing you the secret of his great strength and how we can overpower him so that we may tie him up and subdue him. Each one of us will give you 1,100 shekels of silver." So Delilah said to Samson, "Tell me the secret of your great strength and how you can be subdued." We're going to pause here for a second. Samson's killed a lot of Philistines up until this point, and so they're going to Delilah and they're like, "Hey, help us, okay? Can you help us?" And she's like, "Yeah, that sounds great." And I feel sad for Samson in this point because he's fallen in love, it says, with someone that's going to betray him for money. This is the very first time that we've ever heard of Samson loving someone. If you read his story, you'll note this is the third woman that he has shown interest in. But unfortunately, he's fallen in love with someone that doesn't feel the same way about him. And so Samson ends up answering Delilah, and he lies to her 3 times about the secret of his strength, okay? Verse 15. She says, "How can you say I love you when you won't confide in me? This is the 3rd time you've made a fool of me and haven't told me the secret of your great strength." With such nagging, she prodded him day after day until he was sick to death of it. You guys, that's the NIV. That's like not even the Message. Okay? Anyone know that feeling? You can keep your hands down. So he told her everything. "No razor has ever been used on my head," he said, "because I've been a Nazirite dedicated to God from my mother's womb. If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me. I would become weak as any other man." After this moment, Delilah ends up telling the Philistines the secret. She gets her money. She puts Samson to sleep on her lap, it says. And then she had someone come shave his head. And when his head was shaved, verse 19 tells us that his strength left him. And when he awoke from his sleep, the Philistines are closing in on him, and he is unable to escape as he'd always done because sad, you guys. Verse 20, he didn't know the Lord had left him. He didn't even know. 21 says the Philistines seized him, gouged out his eyes, took him down to Gaza, binding him with bronze shackles. They set him to grinding grain in prison. Now, Samson's hair was a sign that he was set apart, you guys. It was a reminder of the vow that he had taken and God's favor to him. Samson is a great example of someone who was anointed by God for a specific point of time, yet because he struggled with his character and he chose his own ways, the favor of God left him. And I use the word favor there on purpose, because we're going to see that those Samson's dumb decisions ended up catching up with him. He lost his strength, but God didn't give up on him. I can imagine that prison life would be noticeably different than Samson's other life. He can no longer prioritize his own desires. He can no longer protect his people. He can no longer be an outward testimony to the entire community of the God he's to serve. He is a blind prisoner, not a strong warrior. And I have to imagine that the realization that his strength was gone and God's favor had left him, and the subsequent days of being tortured in this Philistine prison must have been some of the hardest days of Samson's life. Anyone ever seen the TV show Alone? Some of you. You guys, it's a show. There's 10 survival specialists. They go out into this. They're all different places. There's different seasons. Each season is in a different place. They drop them off somewhere in the world where the conditions outside are harsh, really hot, really cold, really wet, etc. The goal of the show is to figure out how to live and survive there alone. And the last one to leave gets $500,000. That's the goal. I want to be the last one to leave. I have to live alone. But they have to make their own shelter and find their own food, and they have very little supplies, okay? They have to fight off predators. At any point in time, they can use their satellite phone to tap out and go home, okay? At any point in time. But if they don't, the thought is, oh my gosh, I could get $500,000. If I get $500,000, what I could do with $500,000, right? So that's kind of what keeps them there up until about day 30. And I've noticed a pattern. Again, AJ watches it. I've seen a couple of shows and seasons here and there. But the pattern is, as hard as the physical conditions are, the mental, emotional conditions, just as difficult. Yeah. Somewhere in the 30-day range, people start really examining their lives at home. They're like, $500,000, who cares anymore? They really start thinking about their childhood, their parents, their siblings, different memories they have of growing up, their spouses and their kids. There is a shift that begins to take place because they've had a lot of time without food. They fasted. And they've had a lot of time in solitude to think about what is important to them and who they want to be and why they aren't who they want to be. They talk about how busy their lives are at home and how peaceful and calm it is wherever they are, even when the conditions are really hard. There seems to be a stripping away of something that is invisible, that they were not even aware was there. It's almost like they're rediscovering what they were originally called to do, and it becomes this enormous gift of clarity for them. In a lot of cases, that is what then becomes their focus to keep them on track for the remainder of their time. But Dietrich Bonhoeffer said, "We are so afraid of silence that we chase ourselves from one event to the next in order to not have to spend a moment alone with ourselves, in order to not have to look at ourselves in the mirror." And I think a lot of us know the heart of solitude. We were forced into it during quarantine a couple of years ago, and we are barely recovered from the hard of solitude. Many of us didn't like what we saw in the mirror. But how many of you know the gifts and fruit of solitude? Yeah, go on, you can put your hands up. People are like, do I want to say it? Alone and without distractions, we can put ourselves in a place where God can reveal things to us that we may not notice in the normal, everyday parts of life. Solitude is simple. It's not easy. It is simple, and anyone can do it. You can do it while you're driving your car or on a walk or on a run or sitting in your favorite chair or in your garden or in your office. The place of solitude is flexible. But the point of solitude is to leave people and sound and distractions behind in order to be alone with God. That's it. It's the place where we can just listen to and delight in God. It's like doing nothing, but it's doing something because we are with God. In solitude, we discover who we are in God. We're offered again the invitation to move away from what others or the world is trying to mold us into. It's a practice of giving ourselves time and space to internalize what we already know and quiet our interior noise so that we may better listen to God. And I tell you all that because I don't know how long Samson was in prison for. I don't know. I don't know who he was with in prison. I don't know how long he was in there. But I do know that his eyes were gouged out, and I do know that they tried to give him the job of grinding grain. I imagine that he had a lot of time to think about his life He had a lot of time to chat with God. It seems that all of the hope and all the promise and everything that Samson's life held was lost. He had failed God and he'd failed his people miserably. We're going to keep going. Judges 16:22. But the hair on his head began to grow again after it had been shaved. Now the rulers of the Philistines assembled to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon, their god, and celebrate. You guys, the rulers of the Philistines, they're having a huge party. They're saying, our God has delivered Samson, our enemy, into our hands. And when the people saw him, they praised their God, saying, our God has delivered our enemy, Samson, into our hands, the one who has laid waste and multiplied our slain. While they were in high spirits, they shouted, bring out Samson to entertain us. And so they called Samson out of prison, and he performed for them. And when they stood him among the pillars, Samson said to the servant who held his hand, put me where I can feel the pillars to support the temple, so that I may lean against them. Now the temple was crowded with men and women. Keyword here, all the rulers of the Philistines were there. All on the roof, about 3,000 men and women watching Samson perform. Samson prayed to the Lord. And just a side note, this is only the second time in all 4 chapters we ever see Samson praying to the Lord. Only time 2. Samson prays to the Lord, sovereign Lord, remember me. Please, God, strengthen me just once more, and let me, with one blow, get revenge on the Philistines for my 2 eyes. Samson then reached toward the 2 central pillars on which the temple stood, bracing himself against them, his right hand on one, his left hand on the other. Samson said, let me die with the Philistines. He pushed with all his might, and down came the temple on the rulers and all the people in it. Thus he killed many more when he died than when he lived. Wow, you guys, what an ending, right? Samson went from his weakest point to his strongest point in like seconds. And here we see as evidence again that when we call and cry out to the Lord when we are in need, he answers us. Just when we thought Samson's life was over and he had failed everyone miserably, this surprisingly amazing shift happens in his priorities. He sees an opportunity to reclaim the role that he had previously squandered, and he comes through, guys, delivering his people and killing the Philistine rulers and destroying the temple of Dagon in one moment. Why isn't that the thing that people say when I say, what do you know about Samson? One of my favorite things I've been thinking about while prepping this sermon was, what's the key to Samson's shift? How did that happen? And I do think that, he's loosely serving God, and the next thing we know, he's like completely committed to his calling. He's completely committed to what God has asked him to do, to the point of death. And I'm like, how can we get there? How did he get there? And I think that certainly his circumstances and his solitude helped, right? I think certainly that helped transform his character for sure. And I know that God wastes nothing and can use everything, including all of our dumb decisions that we've made. But if we look back at verse 21, after Samson's eyes were gouged out and he was given the new job of grinding grain, it says the hair on his head began to grow again. And I think we can look at that verse and be like, duh, when you shave your head, it grows again. Or we can look at it differently. Anyone that took a Nazirite vow, remember the Nazirite vow? Anyone that took the Nazirite vow, if you accidentally broke the Nazirite vow, the way in which you were to reconcile yourself for that restore the promise that you made. The way you did that was to shave your head and bring an offering to be sacrificed. And I think when Samson's hair began to grow again, he was reminded of the vow, and he was reminded of the call that God had on his life. And I believe that's what helped him make a decision to seek restoration with God and begin living his life in line again with what God had called him to do. Almost like the shaving of his head was almost like an opportunity for a redo. And the only thing that he had left was to sacrifice himself. Romans 11:29 says, "For the gifts and the call of God are irrevocable. He does not withdraw what he has given, nor does he change his mind about those to whom he gives his grace or to whom he sends his call." The Message version says, God's gift and call are under full warranty. They are never canceled or rescinded. The word call there in Greek is klesis. It means to summons or to give an invitation. The gifts and call or the invitation of God to you is permanent. No matter where you go or what you do or who you think you are, God has called you. And what he's called you to is forever available to you as you're breathing. He does not change his mind depending on whether or not we are doing things perfectly. He does not withdraw it when we make dumb decisions. He does not give it away to someone else if you forget what it is or why you're doing what you're doing. He doesn't cancel your assignment or void your call because of anything that you have done. And just to be clear, your call can't be stolen. It can't be taken from you because of something someone else has done to you or against you. Your call from God is for you. It's for you alone to grab hold of and step into. And Samson may have lost his strength, but he did not lose his call. He was able to take the Nazirite vow. I don't know if he did or not, but he could have taken the Nazirite vow again. He was able to deliver his people because that is what he was called to do. My invitation to you over the next couple of weeks is carve out some intentional time for solitude. Get with God so you can be reminded of who you are and what you've been invited to. You may find that you need to shift a few things. You may find that you need to ask some questions. You may find something that you forgot you already had. You may find who you are. You may find that after these encounters that you have in solitude with God, it's not solitude by yourself. It's not you just like being there sitting with yourself. It is intentional. I'm sitting, I'm listening. I want to be with God, or I'm running and I'm listening and I want to be with God. Less talking, more listening. I think that after that, you'll never be the same. I spent a lot of time in solitude over the spring. I am not the same. Ephesians 2:10, this is the Message version. It says that we neither make nor save ourselves. God does both the making and the saving. He creates each of us by Christ Jesus to join him in the work that he does, the good work that he has gotten ready for us to do. With that, we're going to take communion. If you need communion, raise your hand. I actually feel like it's a gift that we neither make nor save ourselves, guys. You don't have to do anything. Hands up, hands up. Who needs communion? You got it? Okay. As we prepare ourselves to take the bread this morning, this is you guys. You guys close your eyes. This is your time with God. Your time with God. You are holding in your hand the reminder of what Jesus did for us and what it means. We get to live a free life. We don't have to make or save ourselves because Jesus' sacrifice was the ultimate sacrifice. So before you take the bread, give thanks and gratitude to God for that truth this morning. You may take the juice. Go ahead and stand. Hi. Do you have something to say? Yeah. Okay. Oh, I just have a blessing. I have a blessing to read over them before we leave. So you can go ahead.
You reckon?
You go on, girl.
Okay. Thanks, Lucas. I just felt like this is really holy ground. What Angie's talking about right now. So many of us, our sin and our failures are so before us. It's not like we need a reminder. I think for most of you, you're not living a delusional life where you think you're perfect before the Lord and you're not. I think most of us live opposite that. There's a lot of times in our lives where we go to do something for the Lord, or we even consider doing something, and our sin just rears in our face. Every failure that we've ever done, it's like it's right here, and we feel like a hypocrite. We feel like we could not possibly be used by God. We feel like we have somehow missed it. I'm a pastor. I do this. I talk to people for a living, and it is a common thread that I hear from most people. I had a call of God on my life and I blew it. I want to do something for God, but I failed. I have a character that has been compromised. I have habits or addictions that have made me feel like a failure. God couldn't possibly use me, and even if he did, then everyone would point fingers and say, hey, we know what you used to do, or we know the things that you've been. And that type of guilt and shame holds us. And there's freedom in here today.
Yeah.
If you choose to grab a hold of it, there is freedom. The story of Samson, for me, is so profound because he screws up so much in his life. Failure after failure after failure. But when he is in that place of solitude, when his eyes are gouged out and he is turning that millstone, his faith becomes his own in a really powerful way. And the Lord, everything that angel believed to be true about him came true in the final day of his life. And you have a timeline in your head that, like, because I haven't done this by age 30 or age 40 or age 50, that God can no longer use me, that I'm just on this plan B or plan C or plan D life. And that is not true. There is freedom here today if you only believe it. God has not given up on you.
Yeah.
His plan and his calling on your life is here, and it is available for you.
Yeah.
It is here for you to say yes to right now. So in this place, we are going, because I couldn't get my band back, am going to lead you through the little reprise of this song that Brent is playing. Not for a minute was I forsaken. And we are going to sing this over our own souls. I want you to sing this and believe this. Angie's out. We bless Angie. Angie, I bless you, Angie.
This was my blessing. I really
This is your
wanted
blessing.
to.
I will bless. We were going to sing it, and then I will
Thank
read
you.
this blessing for you. But I want you to sing this over your soul, okay? Because singing is powerful, and we're going to sing it together. Let's do it, Brant, you and me. Not for a minute was I forsaken. The Lord is in this place. Lord is in this place. Come, Holy Spirit, dry bones awaken. The Lord is in this place. The Lord is in this place. Let's sing it again. Not for a minute was I forsaken. The Lord is in this place. The Lord is in this place. Let's sing it, church. And come, Holy Spirit, dry bones awaken. The Lord is in this place. The Lord is in this place. Sing it over your life. And not for a minute was I forsaken. The Lord is in this place. Yes, the Lord is in this place. Come, Holy Spirit, dry bones awaken. The Lord is in this place. Yes, the Lord is in this place. I'm going to read this blessing over you. It is from Ephesians 1:18 through 19 and 2 Thessalonians 1:11. I pray that our God will make you fit for what He has called you to be. I pray that He'll fill your good ideas and your acts of faith with His own energy so that it all amounts to something. I ask the God of our Master Jesus Christ, the Lord of glory, to make you intelligent and discerning in knowing Him personally. May your eyes be focused and clear so that you can see exactly what He is calling you to do. May you grasp the immensity of this glorious way of life that He has for each one of His followers. May you know the utter extravagance of His work in us who trust Him. May you have endless energy and boundless strength to walk forward and to grab a hold of all that He has called you to. Prayer team, if you want to come down, I would love that. If you were in this place and you were like, I need prayer for this because I have sidelined myself because, gosh, I have failed. I have failed the Lord, and I have felt Him leave me. I know how Samson feels. I felt that same feeling, and there is an opportunity for you to reconnect with the God that loves you so much, and not just to reconnect with Him, but to reconnect with the call that has never left you. While there is breath in your body, you have hope and purpose and a future, and the Lord will do what He has set out to do in your life that you know to be true in your heart. And it's time for you to be able to say yes to that again. So come forward, receive prayer. And for any of the rest of you, please have conversations like this at lunch and through the week with your friends. Don't just forget about this. This is something that God is doing here, and He is calling all of us into it. Thank you for coming to church. May you feel the blessing of the Lord today. Thank you.